This is the noon news from Montana's news leader.
Good afternoon and welcome to the statewide noon news. I'm Aja Goare. Our top story today, President Trump will address veterans in Reno, Nevada this afternoon after he left his campaign rally in Arizona last night. While in Phoenix, the president took aim at his opponents, the media, Democrats, and even some Republicans. The event was met with chaotic protests. CBS's Aja Goare has more.
The very dishonest media, those people right up there with all the cameras.
President Trump took aim at the media Tuesday night, spending more than 16 minutes claiming his response to the Charlottesville protests were misrepresented.
They don't want to report that I spoke out forcefully against hatred, bigotry, and violence, and strongly condemned the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, and the KKK.
The president went on to slam Arizona's 2 Republican senators. He laid out his frustrations with Senator John McCain for voting against the GOP health care plan.
One vote away, I will not mention any names.
And called out Senator Jeff Flake for being lax on border security.
And nobody wants me to talk about your other senator, who's weak on borders, weak on crime, so I won't talk about him.
President Trump also threatened Congress to pass funding for his border wall and spelled out the consequences if it fails.
Believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall.
Before the rally, Trump supporters were met with a wall of protesters angry over the president's agenda. After the event, Phoenix police used tear gas to disperse what they say was a small group of demonstrators who refused to leave. Aja Goare, CBS News, the White House.
Meanwhile, the rift between President Trump and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell appears to be growing wider. The president publicly criticized McConnell over the Senate Republican failure to repeal Obamacare. The New York Times reports the two have not spoken in weeks following a heated phone call earlier this month. Witnesses say that call went awry and left the two men screaming at each other. Here in Montana, a Great Falls woman now admits she played a role in the murder of a high school student last year. Brianna Mae Coombs pleaded guilty Tuesday to 1 count of robbery. Coombs claims she only intended to rob 18-year-old Megan Merriweather last September. She says she did not expect Merriweather to die. Investigators say Coombs and her boyfriend Joseph Knowles met with Merriweather to purchase marijuana. That's when Merriweather and Coombs got into a physical altercation. Knowles took Merriweather's knife and allegedly stabbed her. As part of a plea agreement, Coombs, she must testify against her boyfriend. A sentencing date has not been set. A fire broke out at a trailer home in Huntley this morning, causing significant damage. Firefighters from Huntley, Warden, and Shepherd all responded to the structure on Rocky Cliffs Trail south of Huntley. The call came in sometime after 8:30 a.m. The home was unoccupied when the fire broke out and no injuries were reported. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Helena city leaders are now defending the process they took to remove the Confederate Memorial Fountain in Hill Park. The Helena City Commission adopted an emergency ordinance to suspend the city historic preservation rules for the fountain. That fountain was a contributing structure to the Helena Historic District, so it would normally have to undergo a review process of up to 60 days before removal. The city manager says the city does not have to go through the demolition review process for properties it owns. Commissioners wanted to remove the fountain quickly to prevent any possible conflict around its removal. The emergency ordinance decided last week was a way to formalize that intention. Another round of belt tightening could be in the works for state government agencies in Helena. The Bullock administration is asking state agencies to identify another 5% in additional budget cuts. State agencies were asked to submit possible cuts to the governor's office by last Friday. The governor's office says the request falls under a law that allows the budget director to ask agencies to submit plans to operate on 95% of their budget. State law also allows the governor to cut state agency budgets of up to 10% if revenue falls below a certain point. Any cuts would be on top of $70 million in budget reductions, which are already in place for the next 2 years. Those cuts were triggered by a failed June 30th tax revenue target. Meanwhile, Governor Bullock is urging people to be patient and work together through the remainder of this tough fire season. The governor learned at an incident command post briefing in Florence the Lolo Peak fire could burn for weeks. But fire managers say they're also making progress fighting the blaze, which has now consumed over 33,000 acres. Calmer weather over the past few days has allowed crews to conduct mop-up operations where the fire exploded late last week. Governor Bullock learned Tuesday that crews are taking advantage of the current conditions, hitting the fire with retardant in preparation for more unsettled weather later this week. Fire managers say pre-planning more than a month before last week's blow-up saved hundreds of homes.
And recognize that for all of you, even as we lose a couple of structures, that this has been a hard fire season on anybody that's come out here. I mean, to lose 2 lives, the folks who are fighting fires and making a difference for our communities each and every day, that any frustrations that people have, we ought to be given a little bit of grace as a result of that.
Evacuations do remain in effect for 185 families in Missoula County and 245 in Ravalli County. 385 residents are under evacuation warnings. And residents of Seeley Lake remain under a thick blanket of smoke from the nearby Rice Ridge fire. Hazardous air quality has been a persistent issue during the late night and morning hours in particular. With school set to start in 2 weeks, the Seeley Lake District School Superintendent says they will take necessary precautions. Turning now to the weather scene, Ed, smoky air is not even a bad excuse for students not to go to school, but it's persisting.
It is. In fact, today is one of the worst we've seen for a while, Asia. Let's go ahead and take a look out towards Missoula today, where you can just see that thick haze just hanging over the city. Looking a bit north of there around Polson, you can barely make out Flathead Lake thanks to a lot of the haze that's sticking around. And it isn't just there. In fact, unhealthy air quality has really started to move in across much of the region of southwest Montana. As you can see with the dots there, anywhere from Seeley Lake, we were just talking about, south to Hamilton, the Butte area, Dillon, and then there is even some of that haze across the eastern plains. We'll talk more about how the weather may affect that haze coming up here with a forecast in just a few minutes.
Thanks, Ed. We'll check back in. The jackpot for tonight's Powerball lottery drawing is now the second largest in U.S. history. Matching all 6 balls will win you $700 million. CBS's Kenneth Craig reports.
Nancy Spector is not relying on any quick-pick computer program to make her a millionaire. She's betting on her birthday and the license plate of the truck that just drove by to get her a piece of the Powerball fortune.
I just can't believe that nobody gets all the numbers in the whole USA.
In fact, no one has matched all 6 numbers since June, so the jackpot has grown to an estimated $700 million, the second largest in U.S. history.
I just want to win. If I win, I'll share.
The chances of winning this jackpot tonight, just 1 in 292 million. Those odds have actually dropped in the past couple of years.
In 2015, the chances of winning were roughly 1 in 175 million.
I'm gonna win.
But then Powerball officials changed the number of those white balls in the cage from 59 to 69, sending jackpot-winning odds to new lows. But at the same time, it makes it easier to win the smaller prizes, and that's just fine for many.
You need more small prizes too, though. Yeah, it helps, it gives you more incentive to play. That's the thing.
Even a few $1 million is a good thing.
Exactly, yeah, a few thousand.
If no one matches tonight's Powerball numbers, the jackpot will keep growing, possibly surpassing the current record Powerball jackpot of $1.6 billion. Kenneth Craig, CBS News, New York.
Powerball is available in 44 states. Straight ahead on the noon news, a loss of confidence in a Navy commander's ability to lead following the USS McCain tragedy. Details when we come back. But first, Ed has a look at our weather forecast. We'll be right back.
You're watching MTN News with Aja Goare, Storm Tracker weather with Ed McIntosh, and farm and ranch news from the Northern Egg Network. This is the news.